In a quiet town nestled in the Appalachian Mountains, there was a legend that had been whispered among locals for generations. The story went that once a year, on a cold autumn night when the fog rolled thick over the valleys, a ghostly train would pass through the town, a train that had no station, no passengers, and no known destination. They called it the last train to nowhere. The legend was mostly dismissed as an old wives' tale, something to spook children around a campfire. But one autumn, a group of friends, Evan, Mark, Olivia, and Sarah, decided to see if there was any truth to it. They were seniors in high school, bored with their small town and eager for one last adventure before they all went their separate ways. The night they chose was particularly eerie. The moon was full, casting an otherworldly glow on the fog that blanketed the streets. The air was crisp, carrying with it the scent of burning wood from nearby chimneys. The group gathered near the old train tracks that cut through the outskirts of town, armed with flashlights, snacks, and a healthy dose of skepticism. They waited for hours, the cold seeping into their bones as the night grew darker and the fog thicker. Just as they were about to give up and head home, they heard it, a distant, low whistle that seemed to echo through the mountains. They looked at each other in disbelief, wondering if their minds were playing tricks on them. But then they heard it again, louder this time, accompanied by the faint sound of chugging steam. Out of the fog, the train appeared. It was an old steam locomotive, its black iron body gleaming under the moonlight, its wheels grinding slowly on the rusted tracks. The train moved with an eerie silence, as though it were gliding through the air rather than rolling on metal. The windows were dark, giving no hint of what or who might be inside. Despite their fear, the group was drawn to the train, compelled by a strange mix of curiosity and dread. As it slowed to a stop in front of them, the doors of the first carriage creaked open with a groan that echoed in the still night. Without a word, they knew they had to board. The interior of the train was like stepping back in time. The seats were upholstered in red velvet, the wood polished to a shine, and the air thick with the scent of old leather and something sweet like pipe tobacco. The train was empty, save for a single lantern that flickered at the far end of the carriage. As they walked down the aisle, the door at the end of the carriage slowly swung open, leading them into the next car and then the next. Each car they entered seemed older, more decrepit, as though the train itself was aging rapidly as they moved through it. Dust coated the seats, cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the wood began to rot underfoot. But what was most unsettling was that, with each carriage they passed through, the world outside the windows seemed to change. The familiar fog-covered town had vanished, replaced by strange, desolate landscapes, endless deserts, frozen tundras, dark forests with twisted trees. It was as though the train was traveling through different worlds, each more surreal and haunting than the last. They tried to turn back, but the doors behind them had vanished, replaced by solid walls. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped on the train, moving further and further from the reality they knew. The lanterns flickered and dimmed, the air grew colder, and a deep rumbling sound began to resonate through the train like a heartbeat. At the end of the final carriage, they found a door that was different from the others. It was made of heavy iron, covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. Evan, the bravest of the group, reached out and touched the door. It swung open with a creak, revealing a staircase that led downward into the bowels of the train. With no other option, they descended the stairs, the temperature dropping with each step. The walls were cold and damp, the air filled with the sound of distant, echoing whispers. At the bottom of the staircase, they found themselves in a small, circular room, lit only by a single dim light bulb that swayed from the ceiling. In the center of the room was an old, ornate chest, its surface covered in the same glowing symbols as the door. The whispers grew louder, almost pleading, as they approached the chest. Despite their fear, they knew that whatever was in the chest was the key to their escape. Mark, hands trembling, knelt down and opened the chest. Inside was a small, intricately carved box made of dark wood, sealed with a heavy padlock. The whispers grew frantic, filling the room with a cacophony of voices, urging them to open the box. But when they did, all they found inside was an old, faded ticket, the kind you'd get at a carnival or a movie theater. The ticket was stamped with a single word: return. As soon as the ticket was removed from the box, the whispers stopped. The room grew silent, the air still. For a moment, it felt as though time itself had frozen. Then the ground began to shake, and the walls around them started to collapse, the train itself disintegrating into dust. Clutching the ticket, they ran back up the stairs, through the carriages that were now falling apart around them. Just as the train was about to dissolve into nothingness, they reached the last carriage door and leaped out onto the tracks. They found themselves back in their town, standing on the old train tracks, the fog beginning to lift as the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon. The train was gone, as though it had never been there. But the ticket remained in Mark's hand, its ink still fresh. The group never spoke of what happened that night, but they all knew that the ticket was more than just a piece of paper. It was a reminder. A reminder that some journeys are meant to be taken only once, and that the past, no matter how distant, is never truly gone. Every year after that, on the same autumn night, they would gather at the tracks, watching for the faint glow of the ghostly train. But the last train to nowhere never appeared again. The story of that night became a new legend in the town, a tale of friendship, fear, and the unknown. And while the train was never seen again, the mystery of the last train to nowhere lived on, a reminder that some adventures are best left in the realm of legend.